Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder of Streamlined Properties and the team leader of Streamlined Properties on Market, brokered by eXp Realty. Whether you are looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Welcome back to another week of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. You probably know that by now. And you know in the beginning you're going to get a couple reminders. One being we have 10-minute clips of each episode on my YouTube channel at Jonathan Green RE. It's a great way to put faces to the names. And then you go back, listen to the podcasts like this, wherever you choose to listen to podcasts. And while you're there, like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a 5-star review. These are things that help all podcasts scale up, and I'd really appreciate it. This week, I have Martin Saenz of BeQuest Legacy Investing. He's going to talk to you about creating a better life through simple investments. Let's get to it. This is episode 67 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Martin Saenz of BeQuest. Martin started investing in real estate in 2008, and now BeQuest has grown in 2023 to over 75 million in assets under management with investors from all 50 states and Canada, which I thought was very interesting. Martin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Jonathan.
Yeah, my pleasure. I like to start here. Growing up, did you have an interest in real estate?
I did. Growing up in Jersey, which I know is
we're connecting on that.
And I'm in Florida now, and you were in Florida and moved to Jersey. But yeah, growing up in Jersey, I used to look at the want ads in the newspaper where I would see lots of land available in West Jersey, like Phillipsburg area.
Yeah.
And I was always kind of curious what I could make of it, but I didn't take action till later in life.
Yeah, and what led your interest in that? Was it something that family talked about, or was it just something that you kind of started to get interested in on your own?
Yeah, so my dad was a corporate guy. He worked for Bell Labs Research, and my mom was a school teacher. So neither of them really had the entrepreneur bug, if you will, but I did from early on. And So I think real estate was just kind of part of that. It was just more of a curiosity.
Yeah. And so at what point did it go from curiosity to like, oh, wait, I want to take deep interest in this? And then what led to you finally taking action?
Yeah. So after getting my MBA in 2001, and I got a corporate job, and that's when I officially started hating life. And then I met my spouse, my beautiful bride, a few years later, and at the corporate job, and she turned me on to Rich Dad Poor Dad, the cash flow board game, his board game, and then it all just became real to me, and I'm like, we need to start learning. But what's interesting is that I got fired from my corporate job because I was really bad at it in 04, and then so we started a company together in 05. We went to real estate web seminars, and I don't know if they still do this, but they used to do them in a hotel, and like a Wednesday night, and then they wow you and they give you some promotional whatever, and then for the first 10 that sign up or something. And we did a bunch of that, read a bunch of books, but didn't transact until 09 on our first property.
Wow. So do you feel like there were some time sucks in those 5 years, or did it all end up being worth it now?
So I took one nugget from Kiyosaki, and that was, you need to build a business. You need to have stable cash flow and then parlay profits into real estate. And I'm really glad we took that route. I mean, we started a federal government contracting company, my wife and I, out of the basement of our home. And so it took about 3 years of bleeding out till that's turned around and started making money.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we took that route, because when we started buying real estate, we had money just acquire properties over and over again versus maybe like going like a bird dogging route or something where there was just a little more grind to it.
Yeah, we talk a lot about on the show just about like kind of all the seminars and gurus and the social media. During those 5 years, when you went through all that, were you able to tell like which ones were like kind of timeshare and which ones were like, well, this one's pretty good, and what was worth spending money on? Because I think that's where a lot of new investors are confused now. Everything looks so shiny, but you definitely went through it by doing this. What did you figure out in all that time?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few. I mean, I think Russ Whitney is kind of one of the old school guys. He's like, stick your right hand. If you like what you hear, stick your right hand up. And, okay, then put it in your pocket. All right, take out your credit card. All right,
Yeah,
first 10
right.
people to the back of the room. Boom, boom, boom. Like that. So that was kind of cheese, but yeah, we kind of smelled it out. But fortunate or unfortunate, we were working 100-hour work weeks building our government contracting company. So perhaps I was too busy, inundated to be hustled at the time.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's a different landscape now, though, because like you said, the old school way was more of like this, slow sales, really quick sales, but like slow on the intake. I always think of it like a timeshare because they're like, oh, I'm gonna get a property for free. It's like, well, it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
You're gonna get this first hour for free. Well, so what eventually led to you guys finally taking action and buying a first property?
Yeah, so we outgrew the basement of our home pretty quick, and we had to lease a space. We were there for about a year, and we said to ourselves, we're paying a landlord, we might as well be the landlord, blah, blah, blah. And so I started looking on Craigslist for warehouse buildings in our area, and we were in Northern Virginia at the time. And so I found a warehouse building, and someone had owned it free and clear. And they put on the Craigslist that we will only sell with seller financing with 10% down and a seller note. And I'm like, wow, that's like a dream come true. Like that's the ideal scenario for me. My wife and I met him at Starbucks. It was in 2009. So this guy was really jonesing to sell his place.
Yeah.
And so he wanted 330,000. And then I go, I went and I hardballed him. I go, I'm going to give you 300,000, 10% down, blah, blah, blah. Do the seller note back. And then he about jumped out of his chair and with excitement. And then now I'm still hearing about that from my wife. Like you are the worst negotiator.
Well, I mean, the way that I think of it, I like to look at negotiations as a win-win. And I think while a lot of people like to start low and meet in the middle, I just go with a number. I feel like that's the modern strategy, I think, with what's going on. I think now that works better, at least in my opinion.
I'm going to let my wife know that. John.
Yeah. Now, maybe you coughed up a good 25 grand on that deal, but I mean, you were both happy. How did the space work out? So this was an industrial space with space for your office and anything else in there?
Yeah. It's a flex space. So offices as well as light industrial. And then the next month we bought a neighboring building from him. So owned 2 buildings, sold it. I actually had them rented out for years and I sold it just last year, doubled my money. And so it all worked out in the end. But I did that a few more times. I found Craigslist was helpful. I found some other old timers that wanted the seller note. They wanted an annuity play. And I think we're going to actually get back to that point here in the near future, given the constraints on the banking side. And there's some old timers that are, just kind of sick of the wear of property management, and they just want the cash flow.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the old timers, they don't need the entire cash in on the investment to go spend on something else because they don't want to buy anything else or manage anything else. So just taking the property, selling it, during seller finance like that, I think it works perfectly for them. They avoid cap gains, and their kids can still feel like they might get something someday. The kids are always usually like, sell it. I want the money now.
Yeah.
And no, the smart old time investors will take that cash flow play.
Oh, absolutely. You make it more stability and you make out in the end.
Yeah, one thing you said that I think is important, you bought that second property from the same person. So early on, did you learn quickly, wow, okay, these old timers, they always have more than one property? and they can
Oh, yeah.
become really, really valuable for a cycle of investments, especially in one area.
Yeah, and then I learned I learned the rule of thumb that he was an out of state investor. So he used to run his pest control company in one of the buildings, and so he lived on an island in Florida off the Keys, one of the Keys, and
Yeah.
he wanted nothing to do with these buildings. He just wants a monthly check, and so that's good, like good rule of thumb for any investors, like any out of state investor is really good person to target.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, if you're running lists, you run out of state and then you look them up, see how old they are, and those things start to cash out. How long have they had it? But like you said, it wasn't really a hard negotiation because they if you approach at the right time, it's other investors, yeah, sure, I would like to get rid of it. And then you got a second one from that. You always want to run them to see how many they own in the area because you could get a windfall or at least start with the worst one. So where did you guys go from there?
Yeah, so we were just growing our company, the government contracting company, and buying properties every time we close out on a contract. And so we bought residential properties as well as some other commercial properties, all industrial. I love flex spaces. I love that.
Me too.
I think those stand the test of time. Office buildings and go kaput, residential goes kaput, but strong industrial. I think the rule of thumb with industrial, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I just love this rule of thumb, is that these are block walls where the kitchens are generic laminate and everything is pretty cheap inside, and you have someone just beating up the property 40 hours a week because that's the work week for the business, versus like a residential home where someone's beating the heck out of it 24/7, 7 days a week.
Yeah,
and there's so many more repairs that need to happen in that scenario.
Yeah, I love light industrial. I love the kind of what's happened to industrial now where it's transformed into kind of quasi retail spaces. I own a part of an industrial park in Bridgehampton. My dad literally bought it with partners for like dirt, I don't know, probably 40 years ago. And it's now they have like fancy stuff in there because like Main Street doesn't matter to some of these businesses. So over the years, it's gone from dirt up to a multi-million-dollar facility. But if you just drove up to it, you'd be like, what is this? But it's location based because it's industrial, like right off the main. Was that something that you stayed focused on, industrial, over the years?
Yeah, yes. And reason being is that a lot of towns aren't zoning for industrial. And it's like nobody wants that in their backyard. And all these towns want are McMansions that are paying,
big taxes.
Some taxes, yeah, and industrial parks and buildings and whatnot are sore thumbs. So if you can get industrial in a prime market like you mentioned, I mean that's gold.
Yeah. I think it's just interesting because now there's so many diversified uses. Like you say, a lot of them do come with kitchens, so they can be like offices. You can really retrofit. You can have it for someone who needs to pull trucks in. They usually have big garage doors. There's a lot of different options. But I remember like even when my sister lives out near San Diego in Carlsbad, I started to see what they were doing with industrial parks out there. And that's where like all the kids stuff was. So like when my kids were little, we were always going to industrial parks to go to these, the trampoline parks or the like go-kart. They're all in industrial spaces. And that started to change the way I looked at, use options. I think you're right. There's so many different options for what it can become now. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Counties give you your target list, whatever the permitting is, general use. And I had two churches in two of the buildings at one point, churches, barbershops, just no automotive. Like nobody likes the automotive with all the chemicals and everything.
Yeah, louder and cars. Yeah, but it's different now. Like back then when the internet wasn't like booming on everything. Now you can find everything. So it's not like you don't have to be in a main thoroughfare. All you have to do is get 10 Yelp reviews. And whatever you have going, people will find it as long as. And industrial usually has very good parking per capita because there's a lot of space. I really like it.
And then you got the bay door in the back or the front, and there's just multi-use. It's functional for a lot of businesses, and it's not just in construction. Like you said, there's many other types of businesses that occupy the spaces.
Yeah. Excellent. So what's your primary assets that you look for with your company now? I know you do legacy investing, but as you guys started with real estate as a company, I guess let's start with how you guys started BeQuest.
Yeah. So in 2013, my wife and I, we had our first child a few years prior, 1 year prior. And so once we started doing the family thing, and we have 4 children now, we couldn't do the 100-hour work weeks where I was away at like a military base for 3 weeks on a project. And, that all just got old. And so we sold the company 2013 and literally sold it in May of 2013. And I went to a RIA because that's where, people go when they're trying to find answers, find clarity in life. As an investor, you go to a RIA and then you meet all these people that do blah, 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 blah. And I ran into a note investor, and this note investor, he's like, yeah, I'll buy distressed mortgages from the bank at pennies on the dollar. I'll foreclose. I'll take back the property. And it's like a backdoor way in to get the property. And I'm like, wow, that sounds phenomenal. And, given my experience in real estate, my love for real estate, I go, I'll clean up with this. And what I realized, that was kind of the first, my first 18 months was a big learning curve. I put my own money up, bought a bunch of notes, and I learned massive amounts of lessons in mortgage note investing. And your real estate background is only 50% of what you need to run a successful note investing company.
Yeah, I agree. It's more complicated than people think. And I think it's something that really you have to, like you said, 18 months focus, just so you get it right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a dabble thing because it is complicated to figure out where the returns are going to come from. Through the first 18 months, what do you think the biggest lessons you learned on that note investing was?
Focus on the borrower and their ability to pay. And so I took it from the perspective of the collateral. The underlying collateral is the property. And so my real estate experience was like, wants to know how's the roof look? How are the windows looking? How's the landscape around the property? And all these real estate minded questions that deal with property valuation. Well, that's just half of it. And you have to do credit report pulling and analysis. You have to do skip tracing, bankruptcy searches, title searches, and you have to not just do a title search, you yourself have to read the title report and understand what's involved in there to understand lien validity, occupancy status, and your lien positioning, and there's just a whole bunch of whole list of things you need to know. And so I learned all this, and the first 10 mortgages I purchased, and I purchased them for about $240,000, and they were all on properties in Ohio. I actually went and drove and to see the properties, which was the biggest mistake too as a note investor. I have notes now that are a few miles from here. I've never seen the property. It's so irrelevant to me. But yeah, I went to drive to see the property, and it's just a waste of time, waste of resources. Out of those 10 properties, I think I foreclosed on maybe 6 of them. I barely broke even, but the magic happened when I got my first loan modification. So 2 things happened. I got a loan modification. So I probably bought a $100,000 mortgage for maybe $20,000, and then I modified it at $100,000. So I'm like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then the second one is abandoned property. And they got a divorce, the couple got a divorce, and nobody wanted to deal with the property. And so I call up the guy, and he's like, yeah, I'll sign the property over for debt forgiveness. Yeah, where do I sign? He's like, I'm a truck driver. I'll pull to the next bank and do this.
Yeah.
So then he signs over the property, and I bought this note for $10,000, and I resold the property as is. All I did was change the locks and cut the lawn. And for $36,000 in a matter of like 2 months. And so I got $18,000 down, and I took back a note for $18,000. So I did a seller note. And so those 2 things, I realized that it's not about the property. It's the property doesn't pay you. People pay you. So you need people in the property so that they can pay you in a consistent manner.
Yeah, let's take a couple steps back. We have done a couple note shows, but I think it's always good to just kind of wrap it up. When you're buying a mortgage note or as a note investor, explain to the listeners like what you're buying and then what your goal is. Like, do you want them to foreclose? Like, do you want to be foreclosing? I mean, just explain the process a little so that it's a little bit more clear to people who may be just stumbling on it like, I don't get it. Why don't you care about the house?
Sure. So you're buying a promissory note. So that is a note between homeowner, borrower, and the lender that says that the lender is going to pay you money so you can acquire the property in exchange for terms like an interest rate, the term of the loan, monthly payments, and so forth. And the mortgage or the deed of trust ties that promise to the property in the form of collateral. So you're buying both of those instruments. The mortgage or deed of trust is recorded at the county office. In the promissory note, you hold the original because you need that wedding document held, and we keep it in fireproof safes here in the office, in a very secured part of the office here. So you're buying that obligation, and you're assuming all the rights and responsibilities of the original lender. With that sounds awesome, right? Oh, wow, I'm going to buy the $100,000 mortgage for $20,000. Yes, but like I said, you're assuming all the rights and responsibilities, keyword responsibility. So compliance, regulations, all these things like you have the way with your borrower outreach, you have to be in compliance with the Fair Debt Collection Act. I mean, there's all these regulatory bodies that you have to adhere to. And we learned though that there's two exits. You can exit through the borrower or you can exit through the property. And it's initially more lucrative to exit through the property normally. So if we just took all these mortgages that are behind in a distressed manner, just foreclosed on them and never picked up the phone to talk to the homeowners and just took back the properties and resold them, we 2 to 3x our money within a year easily. But the long-term play is to help the homeowner remain in their home with a payment they can afford while we make a payment stream for ourselves as a company.
Because then you can still later foreclose if you need to, or there's other options out there. Yeah, it's interesting. That sounds so much more complicated than I think people think, who they're like, hey, I'll just take like a note investing seminar and pick them up. Where are these purchased? I mean, like, where do you go if you want to purchase notes? Yeah,
so the secondary mortgage market, there's no secondarymortgagemarket.com where you go on.
Right. Like scroll through like Zillow for pictures of mortgages. How do you get them?
It's called the shadow industry for a reason. And that is because it is a group of professionals, a group of investment firms that know what they're generally, in theory, know what they're doing. Yeah. And there's most of the trades are negotiated trades. So between parties that know each other and have relationships. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's because people don't want to be dragged into lawsuits. So if I sell to Joe down the street and Joe has no idea what he's doing and he doesn't get licensed in the state.
Right.
And he calls people at midnight to collect and he's going to drag me into a lawsuit because the person's going to sue everyone on the chain because that's what lawyers do, right? They go for the cast
whoever's got the money
cast netting approach.
Yeah.
And then I go cast netting with my children. So that's right. Yeah. But so people it's very guarded. It's a very tight knit community where people know each other. If you're a bad seed, you get weeded out eventually. But there is a site called PaperStack that is an online exchange for mortgage notes. But here's the thing is that I would never recommend anyone just go and start buying notes. They need to do a lot of education, research, going to conferences, learning the industry, and building an appropriate sourcing action plan for themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's so many like kind of these side oddities in real estate that I think people don't understand that are more paper based, but I think they're very complicated. So you think people, they really have to go down the rabbit hole of getting training in this. Whereas like you said in the beginning, sure, you can go to a bunch of, seminars on multifamily. It's still a little bit more straightforward. You buy a house, fix it up, sell it. That's straightforward. This with the regulations is a little bit different.
Yeah. If something's easy, it just might be you're missing so much and so much of the risk. and,
right.
and so that'll catch up to you. And so to do something properly, you need to understand all the risks and mitigate those risks through building the right systems with your business. And mortgage notes is a very serious business, because if you go and you're out of compliance with some move that you make, you could have a state attorney general's office that will go after you, rightfully so. And they don't have a budget like you do. They don't. So yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Hey, this is Jonathan. Thanks for listening to another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. On this brief interlude, I wanted to tell you that we have a mailing list. I actually don't love mailing lists. There's so much. This is not an automated mailing list where you get on a drip campaign. These are written once a month, will eventually be at once a week again by me direct, and they're not spammy. So if you want to sign up for our mailing list, you can go to bit.ly/streamlined with a D mail. Bit.ly is bit.ly/streamlined mail. See you there. Yeah, so once you found note investing, did you still continue to invest in tangible assets, real estate, or did you kind of slow that down because this became your focus?
Yeah, so we have about 50 million now in mortgages under management. And so once you build the model and you get all the licenses and your trading partners are actively throwing deals your way, it doesn't get any better from a cash flow perspective. And so yeah, I put my foot off the pedal. Now, we did acquire a 61,000 square foot medical office building last year in Houston for a variety of reasons. But other than that, I've been all mortgage note.
Yeah. Okay. So when people come to invest at BeQuest with you guys, are they investing in the kind of pot of mortgage notes and a return on that?
Yes. So they're investing. We have two sides of the fence. We have an incubator company, which is a collection company for essentially, and that's owned by my partner and myself privately. There's no investors in that. And so that's where we buy these distressed mortgages, these scratch and dent. We work out the payment plans and we re-season those mortgages. So get the homeowners back on track and the file situated. And so that's a private company. Now we have a private offering income fund called BeQuest, and that's a company that buys in these re-performing mortgages from ourselves, and we call that out in the paperwork, but plus from other third-party sources as well, wherever we can get the best pricing for the quality of mortgage that we're seeking out. So for that, we also are the largest investor cash-wise, because it just turns my stomach when there's so many real estate players and they want you to do this and that, and they don't have a penny in the pot.
That makes no sense to me. You give way more credibility to what you're offering if you're the large stake in it, because you're most concerned about it not going down for you and for your investors, of course. But yeah, I think that's really important. It's interesting, though, how you talk about this, because I think people would look at note investing solely as a financial play, but you're really helping a lot of these homeowners. If your focus is, hey, let's get you back on track on a payment schedule, then it's a win-win and they're saving their home. I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah, it's actually it's altruistic, but it's also good business. So in the sense that if I bought this loan at a discount, so I can make certain concessions to meet someone midway. And if I don't work within their budget, then it's not going to be sustainable. And they might pay me initially because they want the heat off of them, but at what cost, right? Like they're going to live off credit cards, which probably most people are doing anyway, but they're going to rob Peter to pay Paul, and that's not going to last forever.
Right.
And so you want a payment plan that where they can afford it, but also too, you're building a relationship. And if you do it the right way, then they're going to make more of an effort to pay you on time, which, by the way, we have an extremely high collectability percentage with our portfolio. We're at 96.3%.
Wow.
Of people pay on time. And these are people that had a scratch event, prior. So we have good relationships. We treat people with respect and compassion, and we view them as our customer.
Yeah, I think too many people kind of get into real estate investing just focused on the money, and they don't understand that there's a win-win in all of these things. And the more that you operate like that, even with other investors, I mean, every type of syndication deal where you're giving money, you want it to be a win-win. Like you said, that's why you have money in the fund for others so you can do it together. I think people are missing out on that a little bit because it just seems like, hey, I'm going to make quick money. It doesn't really work. Doesn't really work like that. If you get lucky, you're going to make quick money and you're going to lose quick money later.
Yeah. So many people invest with like that gambling mentality, and everyone's for the quick fix. Some people are, but I'm just a long-term player. It's I actually describe our income fund with pride to say it's a boring fund. That's what I strive to be, is just boring. Like it hits your bank account every month, first of every month, like clockwork, never missed a payment, never been late. Every month, I show people our track record. Every month, the income we receive off the borrowers exceeds the expenses and distributions to our investors every month. And I show a graph because I want people to know that they're getting paid their money off of the borrowers, not off of new investments.
Yeah, no, I think what you said is really good, because boring is that's what passive investing is. I mean, if you really want to be passive, it's going to be boring because you don't want any activity. You just want consistent money coming in, and people confuse what passive investing, because what you're describing as the operator of this note fund and getting the notes is not passive at all. Like you have to contact all these people, fix their loans, help them with credit, get them back on track, create a new payment schedule, comply with all the regulations.
Yeah.
But by providing that opportunity to someone outside and saying like, hey, look in your bank account every month. That's what those type of investors want. Do you think that's why people are coming to you, because it's so reliable? You have it set up where you're like, yeah, there's not going to be super bells and whistles like a 200 unit complex that's going ground up and you're going to maybe expand that. This is just steady.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I'm really passionate about, like if you go to my LinkedIn page, I put on there, you can put on the slogan, like what sums you up or whatever. Yeah. I put spreading monthly passive income to the world. Like, I think that's just the holy grail of what we all strive. I think a lot of people actually don't even know that's what they need, but everyone needs it. And we're caught up in this world where people just want to put money into Wall Street or put money into these, what they view as high return, but they don't look at the high risk portion, and they're looking to make it. But if they just focus on building assets that produce monthly passive income in a consistent and predictable manner over the course of time, they're going to be set for life. Yeah.
It is. It's the long-term philosophy, I think, is always a win in real estate investing. And from all our guests, the ones that are focused on that as like the way to build a business, they do so much better, because you're not thinking like what's going to come tomorrow. But I guess it is tough. Maybe you do have investors who come sometimes who think that it's going to be a different type of return. And then, like you said, it's very boring and reliable, but some people like shiny,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But with shiny comes a few things like stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
So we all see this, like people are looking on their phones at what stock market or what this crypto's doing or what the Fed's doing in terms of interest rate rise. Like people are just glued to it, and some of them may just be interested, that's what they're interested and passionate about. But most people are just stressed about it. They're like, I just want to make sure my money that I'm putting away isn't going to get lost. And and it's in some abyss. Like you go to a financial planner, you stroke a check, chances are they're not even invested in what they're telling you to invest in, first off. And then secondly, they're sending the money somewhere and they can't even tell you where that money's going.
Yeah.
You can't call like the CFO of Apple and be like, hey, how's that $1 million I just sent you? You know, what can you tell me exactly how it's been put to use?
Yeah. Yeah, I think real estate on a whole, I always say, because even notes are tangible because it's a paper to a tangible asset, which is a property. Like you said, maybe you don't need to drive them all like you did at the time, but real estate in and of itself, you can see it, touch it, look at it. You know, you have the land underneath it. Yeah. Whereas these other assets that we're talking about just exist in space, which I always say is basically like today's money. I'd like to see it in real estate because I know that it's there. I could go live in it if I needed to, you know, and when you need to, you can foreclose on those notes. But I really like the way that you guys are running it because the goal isn't the quicker fix on the foreclosure, because it's better for both parties to build out a new long-term payment plan because you got it at a discount so you can adjust.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you look at like what's the news, right? BRICS and this new currency rollout is going to be linked to gold. And I think that's where we're kind of headed as a society. People want something linked to a hard asset.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I look at my accounts and I wonder like, well, I mean, can I get that? You know, they always make it so difficult when you have stuff invested in index funds. Can I get the money? Oh, well, it's very difficult to give you the money. Okay. Yeah, that's not the type of asset I think I want to keep going with. In our questionnaire, you said something interesting that I wanted to go down. I ask always, well, what is wrong with real estate investing world right now? You answered not enough focus on the net cash flow of an asset. So just describe what you mean by the net cash flow of each asset and how you use that or have in the past to kind of evaluate differently than you think maybe others are.
Yeah. So when we buy pools of mortgages, we look at each individual mortgage in terms of what the potential exit is and what our cash on cash return is for that acquisition. And then we manage to that as we're working out the mortgages and working out plans with the homeowner. So the end game is always in mind. And that is what, you know, we expect to see from a net perspective when it's all said and done. I think that, you know, I would say more kind of generally speaking, I think that probably the biggest challenge is for investors to look at the risk factors with any opportunity, not just BeQuest, any opportunity. And that is who the operator is, you know, what their track record is, how much skin they have in the game, what is their knowledge base, how visible are they in terms of like, do they go to conferences? Are they viewed as a leader? And how transparent? Can I go to their office and shake their hand? And then the asset too, right? Like what is the asset they're acquiring? And what is your connection to that asset as an investor? And is it something you can easily understand? And so that's what I really like about mortgages. I wasn't smart enough to go into IT, and my business partner, he's an IT guy. You know, I wasn't smart enough to go down that road. I can work a financial calculator and a dry erase board, and that's about it. and so I have a connection to mortgages. I understand real estate, and so I understand the emotional equity with the owner-occupied properties. And so that's why I stay close to what I have an understanding towards. And I think people are best served to do that. But I think a lot of people just go to the return. So if I'm an average investor and I want to see a return of some kind, I might look up highest yielding income funds. And then I'll start at the top and I'll be like, oh, well, guess what? Let me pick the highest yielding income fund.
Yeah.
And I'm good. But yet, what is the asset, the underlying asset in that fund? And who is the operator? And what's their track record and all these other risk factors? So start with the operator, start with the asset class, and then the return is just the grade.
Yeah, I think people, if you dial this all the way down to just small scale investments, I think people misconstrue cash flow, because what you're talking about is kind of vetted cash flow. That's why you're saying net cash, you know, all the things together. But if you look at brand new investors, maybe they get sold on like, hey, here's a property, your cash flow is $100 a month. And they get like super excited. Oh, great. You know, I'm going to be in the plus. And then the furnace breaks and it costs $9,000 and you don't make money for 5.5 years. And I think that's where, what you're saying about cash flow is so important. You need to consider all these factors. If you're buying an asset, are there repairs coming? Which I would liken to what you're saying is this a good operator? Because if the operator is not good, then there's going to be a call later because they weren't operating correctly. And to your point, if that operator is not invested in the project, that money is coming from you as an LP, which is exactly what you don't want when you're investing in a fund.
I mean, look at the house of cards with the multifamily space now. It's all these people that bought off of this model that rental rates are going to go up to infinity, yeah. and they buy off the property valuations are just going to continue to soar, and that's not you got to look at the monthly cash flow, and then you got to factor in rental rates are going down in a lot of parts of the country as inventory increases and more multifamily units are coming onto the market and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I always talk about asset hunting when it comes to like buying properties, but I like that how I can see that in what you're doing for mortgages and the notes, because those notes are the assets. And like you said, you're reviewing each one individually to see what their net cash product is each month, because that's going to drive what's going to be the overall goal of a larger portfolio.
There's a lot of hedge funds and investment firms that actually just vet pools of mortgages through sampling. And not just even in the mortgage industry, just in general with other asset classes. And I can't even imagine, how that approach is viable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think now is a very hard time to be an investor, because now it's like great. They can listen to this podcast. They can listen to experts like yourself on notes and all these other things, self-storage, multifamily, everything. But like, it is hard to pick a lane. What was it about notes in the beginning that you said like, okay, this is it. Like I can just get rid of everything else?
I think at the time I was burnt out from the travel with the government contracting. And so notes was something I could do at a Starbucks with my cell phone and laptop.
Yeah. And you learned quickly, like, I don't need to go visit all these assets. That's not the play.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I can do it like from the comfort. But what happens is you kind of get hooked with the bug, because you get your first loan modification and man, this person's going to pay me over 30 years, could be just $300 a month or whatever, but $300 here. And then you modify another 5 and then you modify.
Yeah.
And it just goes on. It just escalates. It's a great way to build a castle for yourself, like one block at a time. So, I mean, a few blocks may fall off the castle wall, but I still have the castle.
Yeah. And it seems like notes is just a definite volume play. It's not something where someone's going to just be like, hey, I'm going to get it. I'm just going to buy one note. That doesn't, first of all, you couldn't get it because you don't have the credibility to get it. But do you think over time, the more you play in this space, the easier it is to get options for new assets because you've built in the credibility, like you said, in the shadow business?
Yeah, the only limitation is our ability to raise capital and to acquire. I mean, it's endless supply because we're in the mix. We have a good reputation. We've never backed out on a trade. And so these things are important in the space that we operate in. Been doing it 10 years. But for anyone new, you really just have to set up yourself correctly, especially having like a compliance plan. You need to have attorneys engaged and attorneys that understand creditor rights and they understand compliance, because those things are significant and you need to have money to invest in that.
Yeah, it seems like from what you said, like the compliance is so important because you can put yourself in a real trouble spot if you don't have that set up from the beginning and you're getting into notes.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very big pitfall. I'd say that's one thing that's overlooked. Everyone can come in and they can learn the mechanics, and this is how I perform due diligence and build streamlined processing. And then this is how I do asset management. But if you're not licensed in the state that you're pursuing foreclosure on a homeowner with, then you're just a ticking time bomb. It's gonna get you at some point.
Yeah. Amazing. So if people want to get in touch with you and Sean at BeQuest, they should go to beqfunds.com.
Yep. Or they can email me at martin@beqfunds.com and I'll be happy to help out. Like you can just ask me general questions. I love sharing information, education. I think that's very important for anyone.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it was great to meet you. It's like we switched spaces. You were in Westfield, now you're in Sarasota. I was in Sarasota, now I'm in Mendham. So hopefully we'll come together in the same spot one of these days.
Yeah, I'm a Jets fan, so I might go up.
Yeah. Well, then you're celebrating because things are looking up for a change.
Well, it's only temporary.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a knowledgeable Jets fan then. All right, Martin, it was an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. This was episode 67 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Martin Saenz of BeQuest Legacy Investing. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.